Grace Anderson had never planned to work as a maid. At 28, she'd spent the last 6 years teaching elementary school, pouring her heart into her students. But summer break meant no paycheck, and her younger sister Katie's car had broken down 2 days before a crucial shift at the Riverside estate, one of the grand historic homes that had been converted into a luxury bed and breakfast. "Please, Grace," Katie had begged over the phone. "Mrs. Henderson will fire me if I miss another day. The bus doesn't run out there, and I can't afford to lose this job." Grace had sighed, looking at her own modest apartment, thinking of Katie's struggles as a single mom trying to make ends meet. "What time do I need to be there?" That's how Grace found herself at 7 on a Saturday morning, wearing Katie's spare uniform, standing in the grand foyer of Riverside Estate with Mrs. Henderson, the stern head housekeeper, explaining her duties. "The Madison suite needs special attention today," Mrs. Henderson said. "Mr. Whitmore is staying there with his son. He's been here 3 weeks now, and he's particular, but fair. Just do your job well, and there won't be any problems." Grace nodded, gathering her cleaning supplies. She'd always found something meditative about bringing order to chaos, making things clean and fresh. It wasn't so different from teaching, really. Both were about creating spaces where people could thrive. The Madison suite was on the 2nd floor, overlooking the gardens. Grace knocked softly. "Housekeeping." No answer. She used her key and entered carefully, calling out again. The suite was empty but clearly occupied. A laptop sat open on the desk, business papers spread around it. Children's books were stacked on the coffee table. A stuffed elephant sat on the couch, and there, scattered across the floor, was the saddest collection of children's drawings Grace had ever seen. She knelt down, carefully gathering them. They were all variations of the same theme: a small boy alone. Dark colors, heavy lines. One showed a figure with tears. Another had a boy standing far away from a man, a vast space between them. Grace's teacher instincts kicked in immediately. This was a child in pain, trying to communicate something the adults around him weren't hearing. She was so absorbed in the drawings that she didn't hear the door open behind her. "What are you doing with those?" Grace jumped, turning to find a man standing in the doorway. He was tall, perhaps in his mid-30s, wearing jeans and a button-down shirt, his dark hair slightly disheveled. But it was his eyes that struck her, exhausted, guarded, and deeply worried. "I'm so sorry," Grace said quickly, standing up with the drawings still in her hands. "I'm filling in for my sister today. I was just cleaning, and I found these on the floor." "I didn't mean to pry." The man's expression softened slightly. He stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. "You're not Katie." "No, I'm Grace. Katie's car broke down. I'm a teacher, actually. Elementary school. She looked down at the drawings in her hands. "I'm sorry, but I couldn't help noticing these. They concern me." Something flickered across the man's face. "They concern me, too," he said quietly. "I'm Nathan Whitmore. The boy who drew those is my son, Oliver. He's 6. Grace handed him the drawings carefully. "Mr. Whitmore, I know it's not my place, but these drawings, they're telling a story. This is a child who's feeling isolated, maybe scared or sad. In my experience, when children draw like this, they're trying to tell us something they don't have words for." Nathan looked at the drawings, his jaw tightening. His mother died 8 months ago, cancer. Since then, Oliver hasn't been the same. He barely speaks, won't play with other children, has nightmares. I've taken him to 3 different therapists. I've tried everything. His voice cracked slightly. I brought him here thinking a change of scenery might help, but I'm starting to think I'm the problem. Maybe I'm not enough for him. Maybe I don't know how to be what he needs. Grace's heart ached for both of them. "May I ask you something? When was the last time you and Oliver just played together? Not therapy, not trying to fix anything. Just played?" Nathan looked confused. I work with him on his emotions. We do the exercises the therapist recommended. I make sure he eats, sleeps, goes to his appointments. But when do you just be his dad? When do you get down on the floor and build towers or tell silly stories or chase butterflies?" Nathan sank onto the couch, his head in his hands. "I'm terrified of doing it wrong. Every moment feels so heavy, so important. What if I say the wrong thing? What if I make it worse? So I stick to the structure, the schedule, the things the experts tell me to do. But you're right. We don't play. We haven't played since before his mother got sick. Grace sat down in the chair across from him, forgetting entirely that she was supposed to be cleaning. Mr. Whitmore, grief doesn't follow a schedule, and children heal through play. It's how they process the world. Maybe Oliver doesn't need another therapy session. Maybe he just needs his dad to show him it's okay to be happy again. Even though you're both sad, maybe he needs permission to be a child. Nathan looked up at her, something like hope dawning in his tired eyes. How do I do that? I've forgotten how. Well, Grace said gently, you start small. You notice what brings even a tiny bit of light to his eyes. You follow his lead. You let yourself be playful, even if it feels forced at first. And you tell him with your actions that it's okay to laugh, that loving and missing his mom can exist right alongside joy. At that moment, the door opened, and a small boy entered clutching a stuffed elephant. He had his father's dark hair and the saddest eyes Grace had ever seen on a child. He stopped when he saw Grace, instinctively moving closer to his father. Oliver, this is Miss Grace, Nathan said softly. She's a friend. Grace smiled warmly but didn't approach. Hi, Oliver. I love your elephant. Does he have a name? Oliver looked at his father, then back at Grace. He shook his head. Well, every elephant needs a name, Grace said. When I was your age, I had a stuffed rabbit named Mr. Hopkinson. He went everywhere with me. The tiniest flicker of interest crossed Oliver's face. You know what Mr. Hopkinson's favorite thing was? Building towers out of blocks and then knocking them down. The bigger the crash, the better. Oliver's grip on the elephant loosened slightly. Grace glanced at Nathan, who nodded. She stood slowly. I bet there are some blocks somewhere in this big house. What if we built the tallest tower ever and then your elephant could knock it down? I think elephants are excellent at that. For the first time, Oliver looked directly at her. Really? Absolutely. In fact, I think elephants might be the world champions of tower knocking. Should we find out? 20 minutes later, Mrs. Henderson came looking for Grace and found her on the floor of the Madison suite with Nathan and Oliver, building an elaborate block tower while all three of them laughed. Oliver was making elephant sounds, getting ready for the big moment. When the tower crashed down, Oliver actually giggled, a sound Nathan later told Grace he hadn't heard in 8 months. Mrs. Henderson frowned. Miss Anderson, you're supposed to be cleaning. Nathan stood quickly. Actually, Mrs. Henderson, I'd like to hire Miss Anderson privately, as Oliver's companion for the rest of our stay. Name your price, Grace, please. Grace looked at Oliver, who was already rebuilding, his face more alive than it had been all morning. She looked at Nathan, whose eyes held a desperate, grateful hope. Then she thought of her empty summer stretching ahead, of Katie's broken car, of the difference she might make. I don't want to be hired, she said softly, but I'd be honored to spend time with Oliver, and maybe teach you both how to play again. Over the next 3 weeks, Grace came to Riverside Estate every day. She taught Oliver to catch fireflies in the garden and release them. She showed Nathan how to build fairy houses from sticks and leaves. They had picnics on the lawn where Oliver told stories through his elephant. They painted rocks and hid them around the estate for others to find. Slowly, gradually, Oliver began to emerge from his grief enough to be a child again. He started talking more, asking questions, even playing with other children at the estate. And Nathan remembered what it felt like to be not just a grieving widower or a worried father, but a whole person capable of joy. One evening, as they watched Oliver chase butterflies in the golden hour light, Nathan said quietly, You saved us. Grace, we were drowning and you threw us a lifeline. You saved yourselves, Grace corrected. I just reminded you both that you're allowed to live even while you grieve. That honoring Oliver's mother doesn't mean staying frozen in sadness. It means living fully, the way she would want you to. Will you keep seeing us? Nathan asked. After we leave here? Oliver asks about you every morning, and he paused. I've started remembering what hope feels like. I don't want to lose that. I don't want to lose you. Grace smiled, watching Oliver's pure joy as a butterfly landed on his finger. I think we've all found something here we didn't know we needed. Yes, Nathan. I'll keep seeing you both, if you'll have a teacher who moonlights as a very bad maid. Nathan laughed, really laughed, for the first time in a year. The worst maid I've ever seen, but the best thing that ever happened to us. Years later, when people asked Grace how she met her husband and stepson, she would tell them about covering a sister's shift, about drawings on the floor, about a sad little boy and his heartbroken father who just needed someone to show them it was okay to play again. She would talk about how sometimes the most important work we do happens in the unplanned moments, in the detours from our expected path. And Oliver, now a thriving teenager, would add with a grin, Grace came to clean our room but ended up cleaning our hearts. Though she really was terrible at the actual cleaning. They would all laugh then, a family forged not from convenience or plan, but from a single morning when compassion looked past job descriptions and saw human need. When a teacher became a friend became family, and brokenness became the doorway to healing. Sometimes, Grace thought, the most important shifts we cover aren't the ones on a schedule. They're the ones we never saw coming. The moments when we choose to show up fully, to see suffering and respond with presence. Those are the shifts that change everything.